Okay, so for our first lesson, we're basically going to take a little tour of the Adobe Photoshop workspace. So the first thing you want to do is come down to Photoshop. Now, you can see that I've got mine on my toolbar. If for any reason you've just downloaded Photoshop, then it might still be in your applications folder. So if you're on a Mac, go to your applications folder, go up to the top where you see Adobe, and you can go down to Photoshop. And a lot of times the icon will actually be right in there. So you can grab that and drag it down to your toolbar, hold it there for a second, and it will add it. As you can see, I've already done that. But that's just how you add Adobe icons to your toolbar. Go into the applications folder, find the folder for the software you want, and just drag it down to your toolbar. So with that said, let's go ahead and open up Photoshop. So as I've said before, Photoshop is one of the most powerful pieces of software Adobe makes. And this is what we call a splash window. This is basically the first window that opens when you launch Photoshop. And this window's actually got some really pretty cool things. I can't say I use it a whole lot other than the fact that it does house all of your recent work. So if if you're working on an image and you don't feel like going back into your hard drive and digging through your folder to find the image to open it, you can simply come to Photoshop. And if you've opened it recently, it'll be right here in your recent images dropdown. So let's just go ahead and start over here on the left and we'll kind of work our way around. First thing you see is the home button, which basically this is the home. If you go to Learn, you can find a bunch of tutorials. As you see right here, you can also browse tutorials right here. This will actually take you to this page, which again is just full of tutorials. Most of these are pretty short, as you can see, about 2 minutes. They open right in the application. So again, once I get you settled and you understand your way around the software, adding to your list of skills and abilities is not difficult because there's just an endless amount of information out there, whether it's on YouTube, lynda.com, or right here in the software. Beyond that, you'll find, let's see if we go home here, you'll find Lightroom photos. So Lightroom is a photo editing software that's generally designed for photographers. And the reason Lightroom exists is for dealing with large amounts of images. If I go out and do a shoot and shoot 500 images, opening them one at a time in Photoshop is not a very viable option. The nice thing about Lightroom is that it does allow you some editing abilities, but they are nowhere near what you're going to find in Photoshop. They're not even on the same plane. All you're going to find in Lightroom is basic lighting and color and things like that. But if I needed to take this petal out and put it over here and blend it in, I could never do that in Lightroom. And that's why we have Photoshop. But if you are simply looking to modify your photographs, change the highlights, change the color, you can do a lot of that in Lightroom. Again, Lightroom is really designed for working with large amounts of images because you can see we can open them all at once here. Anyways, so again, if you're a photographer and you find yourself getting more interested, then Lightroom might be something you consider downloading. The nice thing about Adobe is that if you do have the complete list, you can download all of their software if you're paying for the full membership. So any Lightroom photos are right there. Now, cloud documents are also something that Adobe offers. If you're not aware, Adobe is cloud-based software. And what that means is that you don't actually have a hard copy of Photoshop on your computer that you could, say, load up to a hard drive and load to another computer. Instead, you have this Creative Cloud, which kind of lives up in your corner here, this little icon, and you handle essentially all of your subscriptions directly through this little portal, which is an internet-based portal, meaning you have to have a live internet connection. And one of the things that they offer is the ability to store your images in their cloud, which is essentially meaning that you're storing them on a hard drive somewhere on the internet, somewhere else. It's a great way to keep your images safe. But for me, it takes a little bit too long to get them when I need to use them. So for me, cloud storage is sort of a off-site backup. Other than that, I use lots of external hard drives. So again, I don't really use the cloud, but hey, if you want to, if you don't want to go out and buy hard drives and you'd rather have it there, you can pay a fee and use their cloud service. Again, if you're confused by that word cloud, which let's be honest, it's kind of vague. It just means they have a server somewhere offsite, which has a ton of hard drive space, and you can basically rent some of that hard drive space. The only downside is you have to upload and download everything, which if you're working on large files can take a while. So I recommend a fast external hard drive. That way you can take your photos wherever you need to. And when it fills up, you don't have to worry about deleting anything. You just go buy a new hard drive. And the fact that it's external means that you don't have to replace the hard drive in your computer. So that said, really the things that you end up using most in this splash window are create new, which is going to create a new document, or open, which is going to open something recent, or open something anywhere on your computer or anywhere on your hard drives. In this case, let's come over here and just pop open a recent photo. So I'll double click on this one. And now we are in Photoshop. And let's go ahead and start in this upper left corner and just kind of work our way around. Because if you've never used Photoshop, it's going to be hard to look at this and really get a good idea of what you're looking at. But once someone's kind of shown you and explained it, it's not that complicated. So if you're a little intimidated right now, that's perfectly fine. Just know that it's not going to be like that forever. So if we start over here, we got these three buttons right here. The red one is going to close the software. The yellow one is going to hide the software. And the green one is going to make it go full screen like that, which is nice. I definitely recommend taking advantage of your work area. And what I mean by that is don't squint and lean towards the computer. Instead, make the image nice and big and move around like that. Because you won't notice it. You'll be, leaning forward with your shoulders all clenched, trying to see what you're seeing, when there's a much easier way to just enlarge the image. So those three buttons are where we'll start. And then let's look at everything we've got here. Let's scoot something over. I'm actually running off of two monitors here. And so my second monitor, let's start up here. So we've got close software, minimize the software, and go full screen. This little button right here is the home button, and it's going to take you back here. Okay. If I want to go back to the image, I've got a little back button right here. Okay. So if at any point I need to go back and look at some recent work, I can click on the home button. Or if maybe I want to go find a tutorial real quick to figure out how to do something, I've got that option, and it's really convenient. So we'll go back using that button. Okay, and basically this bar right up here, and I'm going to actually scoot this down because Zoom is blocking some of it. This bar right here is called your menu bar. And with just about any tool you're going to find on this toolbar over here, which we will get to, there's going to be parameters, things you need to change. In this case, I have the brush tool selected. And so right here is the size of my brush tool. Now, right now, my brush tool is humongous. So if I want to change the size, I've got a little slider right there. I can shrink it down, click up here, and now you can see, maybe you can't see, but my brush is, Why is it stuck on crosshair? Anyways, my brush has gotten a lot bigger. If I was to brush something solid, you'd see there's my brush. If I undo that and undo that. Beyond that, so this is gonna be our menu bar. Now, some tools like the text tool are gonna require a lot more information, meaning that for the text tool, we actually have what's called the character window. And the character window has all sorts of things like fonts and weights and sizes, but sort of the bare necessities like font boldness, the weight of the font and font size, and maybe font justification is what this refers to, justifying your paragraphs, as well as font color. So you've got a couple basic things right here, and you'll always have that. Even if you're working with a more complicated tool that needs more than this, you'll always have the basic controls right here. Okay, so that's really important to know. Again, these are your tools down here, and we'll get to these. But for any tool that I choose, whether it's the text tool, maybe the paint bucket tool, you'll see that I've got, again, options that refer specifically to whatever tool I select. So that's a really important part of your window right there. And now if we work our way down, let's take a look. What else do we have here? We also have, we've covered our menu bar, we've covered our option bar, and our exit to home screen. So that takes us over to our tool panel right here. And this is just that. This first tool at the top here is your selection tool, or your move tool as they call it. And each one of these has a key command that I strongly recommend you learn. And the reason for that is that if I'm over here doing work, and I'm maybe zoomed in and I'm doing something to the edge of this shoe, changing some colors, I don't want to have to pull my mouse all the way over here to switch my tool and then go all the way back to where I was working. Things like that will wear you out, and they will make you a much slower editor than you need to be. So instead of switching from the pen tool to the move tool, I'm just going to hit the V key, and now I have the move tool selected. So we'll go through these a little at a time. We're not going to learn them all at once. We'll learn them in sort of groups based on things that do similar things. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of ways to do the same thing in Photoshop, and some of them are more appropriate than others depending on what it is what your goals are. So that's the tool panel. And moving down, let's come over here to the left side now. We've got the little magnifying glass there, which is the in-app search. Meaning if I'm looking for something specific, I can type it in here. Maybe I need the pen tool. Let's see what happens. I can't say that I use this all that often, but there it is. And it's going to show me where the pen tool is. And look, I get a little thing that points to the pen tool. Okay, so if there's a certain tool and I can't find it, I can always type it in. And the reason you might need that is because you'll notice some of these tools have multiple tools inside of them. You're only seeing the eyedropper, but once you click on it, you see that there's actually 6 other tools in there. So that is the in-app search. The next thing you're going to see here is the workspace menu. And that is going to be this guy right here. And what this does is it basically gives you different options for workspaces. All workspaces are different layouts designed for different jobs. The fact is, one of the nicest things about Adobe is that you can redesign this window however you want it. You can grab things by clicking on the tab, and you can move them down here if I want to. But sometimes I don't. And sometimes you actually click and you do it by accident, and all of a sudden your screen gets crazy. And if that's the case, the easy fix is to go Window, Workspaces, Reset Photography, which is the one I'm in right now. So this little drop down right here has the Essentials workspace. If I click on that, you'll see that I've got my color picker. I've got some basic effects that I can add. Basically gives me all my color information. And we'll get to this side here in a minute. But each one of these workspaces, if I'm working in 3D, if I'm working in motion, you may not know this, but you can actually edit video in Photoshop. And if I screw it up, like I said, if I end up dragging stuff out by accident or getting my screen some way that I don't want it, now I can always go back to this menu and just set it on Essentials, or I can choose Reset Essentials, and that'll reset the window. So like I said, if you accidentally screw your window up, just go to this icon right here and go to Reset. All right, and then we get to this guy right here, which is our Share button. If I want to share an image, I can very easily share the original. I can add it to my Lightroom photos. I can send it directly to my Apple Mail, Apple Messages, or my photos. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in there. All right, working our way around, let's take a look here. So this whole side over on the left is basically just called a panel. And the nice thing about the panel is that it's going to house different windows that we use when we're doing different jobs. Like I said, for picking out colors, it's really helpful to have your color picker visible. But let's say I wanted to add some text to this image. Well, I'm not seeing anything over here that's going to help me with that. So if I come over and I click on the text tool, and then I go to Window, and I turn on my character window. And again, to turn on this window, all I have to do is put a check next to it. And there you see my character window pops up. Now, right now it's just floating, but if I wanted to dock it, all I have to do is click the top little tab and just drag it down to one of these blue lines. You'll see that now my character window, which just has text information, is now right there on my panel. So that's kind of how it works. Generally, we've got our tools on the left, we've got our panels on the right, and as we work our way down here, you'll see the layer panel. Layer panel is arguably the most important panel you'll work with, and the reason for that is because it houses all the different layers of your element. So just to show you real quick, if I came down and clicked this little plus button, which is the new layer button, I could add a new layer. And right now, you don't see any changes because the layer I added is empty. But if I come over here and I start to draw, everything I've just done there is on that layer, on the new layer. So we'll get into this a whole lot more. I don't want to get too deep into how Photoshop works. I just want to give you a look around the workspace so you can get familiar and kind of see that we have the ability to move these windows. And if I decide I don't like that layer, I can just drag it down to the trash. So that's how Photoshop works in a nutshell, is that we basically have layers that we build. And as we go through, we can add some of our layers, house elements, and some of our layers are just what we call adjustment layers, meaning that if I can add an adjustment layer, if I go to adjustments and I click on, say, which is a good one here, let's go to brightness contrast, and I brighten it up. Well, you see, it hasn't actually added the effect to the original image. What it's done is it's put the effect on its own layer. And the nice thing about that is you can turn it on, turn it off, keep it, delete it, or go back and adjust it. So there's a lot of really easy things to do here in Photoshop. And we'll get into all this stuff. I'm just giving you a look from 10,000 feet at how this works. And again, if I decide I don't want that layer, boom, it's gone. So for those of you who are familiar with Instagram and Instagram filters, this is kind of like a way to apply looks and effects without having them baked in to your work. And so that's essentially the look at how this works. Again, just a quick review. We've got a couple things up here. We've got our return to home. We've got our close, quit button. We've got our hide button. We've got our full screen button. Right up here, we've got our menu that again is specific to whichever tool you select. Again, each tool has a couple parameters up here. Some of them have more. Also, it's also good to mention that right here, this is my document. Okay, so right now I've opened this photo of this little girl on the swing set, and this is a document. I can have multiple documents open at once. In fact, let me open another one just so you can see what that looks like. If I come over and let's go ahead and just take a screenshot of this. Okay, so now I have this image right here on my desktop. And let's see. If I take this image and I drag it over to the Photoshop icon, you'll see that it opens it. So now I have the original image right here and this one right here, which says screenshot. Okay, so I wanted you to see how Photoshop lays out your documents. You can have multiple documents open at once. And then you can just close them by hitting the little X button. Just make sure that if you want to save it, you save it first by hitting Command S. So again, we've got our buttons over here, our menu. We've got our tools over here on the left. Over here on the right, we have our panels. And again, these can be changed out for whatever it is you're working on. We've got a couple of helpful drop downs right here. The search drop down, the workspace drop down, different workspaces for different types of jobs that you might be doing. But again, it's nothing that you can't create yourself. These are just little presets that are helpful. We've got our share option right here. And then we've got our panels and our layers. So that's where I'm going to leave it off right there.